When Gregor Samsa woke up one morning from anxious dreams, he discovered that in bed he had been changed into a monstrous, verminous bug.
Waking up from a dream to a nightmare. By becoming an insect, Franz Kafka shows us in the Metamorphosis that Gregor Samsa always felt like one. Minuscule, horrible, forgotten. And his family treats him that way, leaving him to die. Feelings of despair, angst, and alienation are felt throughout the novel. And through this haunting imagery, Franz Kafka shows us why he is one of the key figures of Expressionism. Expressionism in the modernist period changed the way in which we perceive reality. Rather than through physical means, ideas or moods are conveyed through emotions. By distorting it radically, this movement presents the world through a subjective perspective.
There's no quiet place here on earth for our love, not in the village and not anywhere else. So I picture a grave, deep and narrow, in which we embrace as if clamped together. I bury my face against you, you yours against me, and no one will ever see us. Expressionism originated in Germany at the beginning of the 20th century. Before the First World War, still remained popular in the Weimar Republic, particularly in Berlin. Expressionism seeks to shock the reader by having surreal situations happen in everyday scenarios. Literature from this era, and more often than not works from Kafka himself, feature dreamlike elements and characters who are overwhelmed by the situation they are presented with. Most of the time, these characters don't know how to cope with it. In context, this was a response to the rapid mechanization and urbanization of Western societies. People at the time were still trying to adapt to this new way of living, and those who didn't know how or couldn't were simply washed away.
I don't know how it will end. Do you know?
I don't, said the priest. But I fear it will end badly. You are considered guilty. Your case will probably not even go beyond a minor court. Provisionally, at least. Your guilt is seen as proven. But I'm not guilty, said Kay. There's been a mistake. How is it even possible for someone to be guilty? We're all human beings here, one like the other. That is true, said the priest. But that's how the guilty speak.
One of the common themes in Kafka's work is the presence of bureaucracy. Kafka himself, having worked in insurance companies throughout most of his life, found that the rapid growth of industrialization in cities led to people being enslaved by the system. In his stories, humans are trapped in this hierarchical web of society, and it becomes an element of horror. Kafka's reflections on these systems leaves us wondering, is human existence really that hollow?
What a fate! To be condemned to work for a firm where the slightest negligence at once gave rise to the gravest suspicion.
Were all the employees nothing but a bunch of scoundrels? Was there not among them one single loyal, devoted man who, had he wasted only an hour or so of the firm's time in the morning, was so tormented by conscience as to be driven out of his mind and actually incapable of leaving his bed?
Kafka was very critical of the Expressionist movement at the time. He thought that writers, for the most part, wrote their protagonists as holy men who didn't have any flaws and too pure for this world. He thought that the idea of a new man was, for the most part, rather absurd. He also saw this overstatement of feelings as indulgent and, for the most part, tried to write characters who were believable.
He thought back on his family with deep emotion and love.
His conviction that he would have to disappear was, if possible, even firmer than his sister's. He remained in this state of empty and peaceful reflection until the tower clock struck 3 in the morning. He still saw that outside the window everything was beginning to grow light. Then, without his consent, his head
sank down to the floor, and from his nostrils streamed his last weak breath.